And all right, so I'm on the Ride1Up Revv1 electric bike, and this bike is so dope, man. It has a really cool style to it. It looks more like a moped or a motorcycle versus your traditional bike, but the way they have designed this bike is pretty doggone good, man. And so it does come in two different colors, so you can get it in green or this gray that I have, which does look more like black, especially out here in the sunlight. But the framing of this bike is really nice, very good clean lines. They do have some kind of cutouts along the frame that really add to the look of it. And a lot of people do compare it to like the Super 73s and stuff. And then something else really attractive about this bike is the price. So it starts at $1,895, so under $2,000 for the hardtail version of this bike, meaning that it just has front suspension, no rear suspension. But if you do want dual suspension, that price jumps up to $23.95, which still isn't that bad. And if you hang in here and watch this entire video, you'll see that you're getting a lot of bike for under $2,000 if you go with the hardtail version. And a lot of these specs and performance things, you would have had to pay maybe like, $3,000 or more just like 2 or 3 years ago. So there's a lot of bike that you're getting for this price. Now there is a difference in battery size depending on which version of this bike that you get. So with the base model of this bike, you will be getting a 52-volt, 15-amp-hour battery. And for the full suspension, more expensive model of this bike, you will be getting a 52-volt, 20-amp-hour battery. But Ride1Up says you still should expect to get between 30 and 60 miles depending on your riding style and how much pedal assist you're using versus the throttle and how much you weigh and different things like that. But no matter what model you get, you're gonna find a very comfortable ride because this does have the best stock seat that I've ever used on an e-bike. So it's just like you kind of really sink into it when you do sit on it. And I've paid for like third-party e-bike seats that cost like $100, $150 that don't feel as good as this one. So they've done a really good job with this seat. So I would say that even with the hardtail version, again, I'm not gonna say it's as comfortable as the softail version, but if you don't plan to do a lot of off-roading, or maybe your city might have better paved roads than I have out here in St. Louis, your ride is going to be really, really, really nice. Now, right now I am taking a left turn and I'm using the built-in turn signals that this bike does have, so that's very convenient to have. And they're built into the rear light on this bike, which is also a brake light, so when you do press on the brakes, it will brighten up a little bit more. And it's also really visible in the daytime too, so that's really nice. But the one thing I do wish that the turn signals did have was like an audible tone or some type of sound so you remember to turn them off when you do make your turn, because they don't have that and I sometimes just forget to turn them off. But one good thing is that they do have a visual indicator that does show up on the big 3.5-inch display that this bike does have. So the screen is not a color display, so it's not as fancy as some other ones that I've used as of late, but it does get the job done. It gives you your information as far as like your speed and your distance and your battery life, all of that good stuff that we come to expect. And it's also bright enough for me to be able to read clearly in direct sunlight right now, especially with my sunglasses on, so I'm happy with that. But I'm also happy with the brightness of the front headlight, which is in more of a motorcycle type of style, so it's really big and bold, but it gets really bright, and you do have two different modes as far as like a high beam and a low beam to choose from. And it also does function as a daytime running light too, so it's always going to be on during the daytime, and that helps with visibility along with the rear tail light being on as well. But I do wish that you did have an option to turn all the lights off and just really go completely blacked out. You don't have that on this bike, so you always have to have the lights on unless you disconnect the headlight via the cables up front, which is not that bad to do. But yeah, I wish there just was an option just to turn everything off. Now this bike does come with a 750-watt motor here, and it does have a decent amount of pick-me-up, so you have 95 Newton meters of torque. So when you do need to kind of get up and go at a stoplight, or maybe you see a car pull out in front of you, it's not that bad as far as being able to, get you out the way in a hurry. And I would say that the 750-watt motor that peaks out at 1500 watts is pretty good. But with that being said, I still feel like the motor in the C-Strom Astra Pro electric bike, it does feel a little bit stronger than this one as far as getting me up to the top speed quicker, and also just kind of like giving me that extra feeling of power. But it doesn't mean that this one is bad. That's just something that I did notice. All right, so now for my speed test. So this will just be using throttle only, and I do have it in the off-road mode. So let's get this thing going in 3, 2, 1, boom, here we go. So the takeoff is not too bad. We're already up to 10 miles per hour. And so yeah, 750-watt motor, peaking out at 1500 watts. We're at 24, 26 miles per hour. And the GPS app on my phone is pretty neck and neck with the bike's display here. We're already at 31 miles per hour. Feeling that wind in my short hair. And we had 33 miles per hour, 34. And again, I weigh about 220 pounds. And can we get 35? We're at 34.9. All right. Yeah, I got it to around 34 miles per hour. Now, I did this test a couple of times before, and I was able to reach up to 35.5 miles per hour. So give or take, a mile per hour, depending on the wind and stuff like that. But 35 miles per hour is the sweet spot for me for my weight and for how I'm going with this bike. But if you are a little bit lighter than me, you might be able to get up to like 36 or so. Now, when you first get the bike, you can't unlock this off-road mode in order to get these fast speeds. You actually have to contact Ride1Up and tell them that you do want to do this, and they'll send you over a waiver, and then you sign the waiver just confirming that you understand the legalities of being able to go in these off-road speeds, and then they'll send you over the instructions on how to go into the settings of this bike and unlock it. And it is a one-time thing as far as like you having to contact them, but after you do that, you'll be able to get these fast speeds. And so again, you don't have to do this. The bike will ship to you as a Class 2 electric bike, meaning that it will allow you to get up to 20 miles per hour. And this will keep it legal in most places, so you can ride it without needing a license or anything like that. But again, if you do want that maximum power, this process really isn't that hard to do, and it's very easy and straightforward to get it done. Now, also for the wheels, they elected to go with using cast wheels instead of spokes, which is better in my opinion, because spokes over time, you just have to keep tightening them up. With these type of wheels, you don't have to worry about anything, just get on and ride. But now let's talk about the overall ride quality. So I'm about 6 feet tall, but this bike does accommodate people between 5'4" and 6'2", and also it can support up to 400 pounds of weight, which is a pretty good range. But then also this bike does come with 20 by 4 inch fat tires, and these tires are e-moped tires. So they're made mostly for the road, which this bike is going to be more of a street bike for me. But if you do need to go a little bit off-road like I'm doing now, this bike does have deep enough treading on the tires to be able to allow me to still feel very comfortable and stuff like this. Now, I'm not going to be taking this mountain biking or anything like that. It's not as nimble for those type of use cases. But again, some streets might be just a little bit bumpy with potholes and stuff like that. And especially with this full suspension, I still feel very in control with this bike. And look, I'm no BMX rider here, but let me do a little bit of a turning test here. Not that bad at all. And so you do have the rubber stoppers here on the front fork to keep you from damaging the frame. But there is one kind of compromised position on this bike, and that's on the chain side of the frame. And so the bike will come with some tape right here where I guess there is a chance where the chain might rub up against the frame of the bike. So again, it comes on by default, but they also do include some extra tape in the box as well, just in case you need to replace it. So definitely not ideal, but I'm glad that they at least addressed it. But hopefully, definitely, again, with the next version, we don't have that issue at all. And so you don't have that one kind of weak point. All right, so now let's talk about pedaling. So right now I have the pedal assist off, so I'm getting no help from the motor, and I'm just using my leg power. And this definitely would suck if you did run out of battery and you had to pedal this thing home, especially because this is a single gear bike, so you don't have multiple gears to help you, so you can't drop down to a lower gear to do this. So definitely don't run out of battery would be my suggestion. But once I start to add the pedal assist, one is kind of like okay, but for me, I would ride this bike at a minimum of pedal assist level 3, so it's a very comfortable riding experience. Oh, and no matter which pedal assist level you're in, whether it's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 5, whenever you use that twist throttle, you will have the full maximum power of the bike available to you, so you don't have to always worry about going to pedal assist level 5. To get max power, you can do that at pedal assist level 1. Oh, and this bike doesn't have a torque sensor, so it does come with a cadence sensor. So if it did have a torque sensor, the pedaling experience will be a little bit more natural and able to keep the rhythm of your legs to the motor power that's being put out. But it's still not bad for a cadence sensor. But one thing I did find is that when I do go to the the maximum pedal assist level 5 here by default, and I start pedaling, and right now I'm at like 25 miles per hour, I start to get a little bit of ghost pedaling where it does feel like I'm pumping my legs really hard, and it's not a lot of resistance, but I'm having to do a lot of rotations to try to get up to the higher speeds over 30 miles per hour. So this also just helps lend this to this really being a bike that's made for using a throttle only when you do want to go past like 25 miles per hour. So anything below that, I'm fine pedaling, but after that, I'm just going to start twisting that throttle, baby. Now, it is a good thing that this bike does weigh around 93 pounds because it's pretty windy today, but this bike isn't going anywhere. So look, this bike is going to be pretty heavy to take up and down stairs and to try to load it up in your truck and stuff. So be aware of that. But let's admire the design a little bit more because this is one of the best looking e-bikes that I've ever had the chance to go ahead and ride. So again, as I mentioned before, I love this whole blacked out look of it, but I also really like this center storage case that I have here on this bike. So I've been showing you some clips of this bike without this storage cage because this is an additional accessory that does cost $100. And Ride1Up doesn't include or sell a rear rack for this bike, so that makes this cage very important, especially if you want to carry some things around on your ride. And you do have a decent amount of space in this thing too, so I'm going to be using it to be able to put like my bike locks and maybe like an extra jacket in there and maybe even like a bike cover inside of this thing. And it also does have enough space to be able to put like an extra battery for the bike inside of there as well. And you might be able to lock it down with an extra bracket too inside of the case. I haven't tried that yet, but definitely if you just want to throw a battery in there, maybe put some stuff in there to give it a little bit of a cushion, you can do that. Now, if you don't get the case, you can still use these mounts to be able to place a water bottle holder or maybe like a bike lock in this particular position as well. Now, as we head towards my hill test here, I did notice going over this cobblestone that you will be hearing that center cage rattle a little bit over something like this, especially for like a sustained amount of time. But, you know, little bumps and stuff like that, I really didn't hear that much, but that is something that I noticed. And all right here, so now for my hill test, and hopefully you can see, this is a pretty substantial hill. It sucks to walk up it, but I'm gonna start from a dead stop and let's get this thing going in 3, 2, 1, boom. And I'm just using throttle only, no pedaling. Typically I would use pedaling just to kind of help out the motor, but you can see this thing is churning up this hill like no other, no problems at all. We're actually gaining speed. We're at like 15 miles per hour right now. Actually, we're hovering around that. Actually, we're about to hit 16. But anyway, that was no problem for this bike. 95 Newton meters of torque, 750 watt motor, peaks out at 1500 watts, and it does a really good job getting up hills. And let's try out a little bit of the hydraulic disc brakes going down this hill, and I'm gonna stop right now. Really good braking too, nice and quiet. Nice and solid. I'm gaining a little bit more speed. You know, and I didn't slam completely on the brakes there like a lot, but I did put a little bit of pressure and it did a pretty good job. Now this bike also does have a walking mode, so just press down on this minus button for a couple of seconds and the motor will kick on just like this. And then now you can walk alongside the bike, and then now this will make it a little bit easier to move this big boy around in your garage, or maybe you're going up a super steep hill or something. So walking mode is always useful. Now let's keep looking around this bike. So you do get front and rear metal fenders that do a pretty good job. Nice coverage on the tires to keep me protected from the puddles and mud and stuff like that on the ground. And then up top on the handlebars, you will find some really good grips, no complaints about them. And then also underneath the controls for the headlight and the turn signals, you will find a button for the electronic horn. And also the cable management on this bike is nice and tight. No sloppy cables here. Everything is tied down or either intelligently routed underneath the bike and stuff. So everything is just really kind of put in its proper place. Now there is one improvement that I do want to see with the back of the bike here. And that's because if you do need to take the tire off for any reason, say you get a flat tire or something, you need to undo the bolts and stuff like that. But for the brakes and also the motor, you have the cables here that go to the controllers and up to the controls and the handlebars. But normally you might find like a little breakaway cable, so you can just unplug right here and then take the tire off. But you don't get breakaway cables here, so you need to actually track this cable all the way in here, I'm assuming, and undo these screws here and then unplug the cables to be able to take the tire off. So breakaway cable would be nice right here. And also, I'm a fan of the lack of logos on this bike. So they went with a very clean look with the logos. So you have a couple of different branding locations here on this bike, but unless you really get up and close, you're really not going to see them. So I personally like that. So they're not really trying to make a name for themselves just by the branding. They really want the design of the bike to kind of really stand out. Oh, and let's talk about the riding position on this bike. So I'm about 6 feet tall, and this is how it looks when I do have my feet planted on the ground when I'm at like a stoplight. And as far as like the position that I'm in, it feels really comfortable. I'm sitting upright, but not too upright. So I find this the riding of this bike to be perfect when you're just using the throttle only. And also, I love this little nest right here that you do have for the battery. So the way the frame of the bike kind of cradles it does help protect it, and just in case like you fall whether you get into an accident or you're just clumsy like me and you knock the bike over. A lot of times you'll see e-bikes just have the battery sitting up here with nothing to protect the sides. So again, you do have a little bit of buffer there. And so I do like that. But just the overall construction of this bike is really great. Now this Revv1 does have some competition. I think people will be asking me about these two bikes. So the first one is going to be the Area Rider Kepler, which is a more traditional looking bike. So that bike will be a little bit more comfortable for me to ride on a bike trail compared to the Revv1 because it doesn't look like a motorcycle. But you do get very fast performance. You can get up to around like 36 miles per hour in my particular case on that bike. And it also does come with a rear rack, so you have built-in storage already out the gate. But that bike doesn't have this style that the Revv1 has, and maybe that's a big selling point to you. And also you don't have a full suspension option at all. You just get front suspension with the Kepler, but that price is around the price of the front suspension model of this Revv1. So that is an interesting bike to look at. And now the second bike is the C-Strom Astro Pro. Now this bike does have a similar motorcycle looking design to this Revv1, but also you do get very similar performance, 30 miles per hour as well. And also that does come with a rear rack that you can also put an additional battery on if you really wanted to extend your range. And this bike does have that big headlight and also does come with an app that you can use to be able to unlock it into the off-road mode. But this bike does hover around the $2,800 price range, but this Astro Pro does not come with full suspension, so you're missing that at the higher price point. But to be fair, this Astro Pro is an older bike, so they will be coming out with a second model of this bike here, probably within a couple of months of me making this video, but we'll stay tuned to see what they do with that bike. And so yeah, there's something about all three of these bikes that I really do like, but I think that if you really took the best of all three of them and put them into one bike, the closest thing that you're going to get is the Revv1 at this point. So I'll drop some links down for this bike so you can get some more information for it or pick one up for yourself down in the description box of this video. And also let me know what you think about this bike in the comments, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, your pros and cons. Let me know down in the comments of this video. And like always, I do want to thank you for watching, and I will catch you later. Peace.